With tensions high between Moscow and Kiev, Ukraine's right-wing radicals have been pouring even more fuel on the fire.
Russia is making money by supplying oil and gas to the West through our pipeline. So we'll destroy it.
Dmitry Yarosh is the leader of Ukraine's ultra-nationalist movement, the Right Sector, which was among the main engines that drove February's violence in Kiev.
Only gun, only fight. And I would say it's not enough even right now. We need like AK or something else.
The new authorities are viewed as a legitimate government by the West. That's despite all the firearms, Molotov cocktails, deaths, and the fact that the uprising brought a wave of far-right extremists to power in Kiev. A leaked conversation also suggested someone from the new government was behind the snipers who fired on both protesters and police in the capital.
That must have all looked rather thrilling in Western chancelleries, unless they had read the novel Frankenstein, because if they had, they'd know that the monster that Dr. Frankenstein created quickly got out of control. And this monstrous threat by the right sector is a very grave one for people in Europe, because at least a third of the European Union's gas supply is coming from Russia.
But even before threatening to blow up the pipeline, Yarosh had already been placed on an international wanted list by Moscow for making another menacing statement. He publicly called on Chechen terrorist Doku Umarov to launch attacks on Russia after it refused to recognize Kiev's new authorities. The Islamist leader Umarov, also known as the Russian Bin Laden, took responsibility for various attacks on authorities and civilians, including the 2010 Moscow Metro and the 2011 Domodedovo International Airport bombings. Over 70 people were killed in these two attacks alone. But cutting off Europe from energy supplies and calling on terrorists to attack Russia wasn't enough. Dmitry Yarosh threatened to build Ukraine's nuclear arsenal. That statement was picked up not only by other nationalists in parliament, but much more moderate politicians as well.
Either someone protects you, like NATO, the United States, or some other big state, either they can provide guarantees for world order, or they cannot. If they cannot, there is no choice. Then you have to protect yourself. And how can you protect yourself from countries like Russia? Only having nuclear weapons.
Even if Ukraine did get its hands on nuclear weapons, it still wouldn't have the means to deliver them. Nonetheless, these are troubling signals which could cast a shadow over the security of the entire continent.
We need to see responsibility from the leading world powers now to look at what's happening in Ukraine, to look at the changes that went on, and to really focus on the seriousness of the problem now with this ultra-nationalists in power in the Ukraine and the dangers that they pose to not just to the region but to Europe as a whole.
It's hard to predict what sort of new threats may come from the new right-wing political elite in Ukraine, but what's clear, so far neither their words nor their deeds have had any impact on their foreign political support in the West. Igor Tiskunov, RT, Moscow.
So the threat from Ukrainian politicians may sound alarming, but just how realistic is it? We've been putting together some facts on the country's nuclear capabilities, and here's what we found. Half of Ukraine's energy comes from nuclear power, so it's certainly got the know-how. Unfortunately for Kiev, all of its fuel is bought from Russia, and it has no way of enriching uranium to weapons grade. On the other hand, if it really wanted to, it could take reactor waste to make a dirty bomb. But by doing this, Ukraine would not only be breaking its international commitments, but its own constitution, which forbids nuclear weapons. And as for delivery vehicles, a nuclear payload can be placed in a simple artillery shell or rocket. But can it all be done in 3 to 6 months? The answer, unfortunately, is yes. A low-tech bomb could be put together in that time frame. Ukraine's current prime minister has vowed to hunt down separatists and make them pay.
Ukraine will find all those responsible for instigating separatism. We will find them in a year or two and place them all on trial. The very ground will burn beneath their feet. There will be no place on earth where they will feel safe, and the Russians will not protect them.
Now, he's also planning to beef up the Ukrainian army, increasing the military budget by nearly $700 million. In order to fund this, Ukraine, which is close to bankruptcy, would have to slash social spending. Kiev admits it needs $35 billion to plug its budget, and the $15 billion promised by the EU are still a long way off.